I thought I'd heard the worst words a parent could hear. I was wrong. Dad, I don't want to see you at my wedding. I don't want to be ashamed. The words from my daughter pierced through me like a blade, but something strange happened. Instead of crumbling, I felt a cold calm wash over me. The hurt was there, burning deep, but it transformed into something else entirely. I looked at her, my own flesh and blood, and smiled. Thank you for your honesty, sweetheart, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She had no idea what she'd just unleashed. Sometimes people need to learn the hard way what family really means. And trust me, you have no idea what's coming next. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. The wedding planning meeting was supposed to be just another step toward my daughter's perfect day. And honestly, I was having a blast. Mr. Thompson, you're a godsend. Maria, the wedding coordinator, practically beamed as I helped her wrestle with a particularly stubborn table arrangement. My back protested. 40 years of construction work had left their mark, but seeing her relieved smile made every ache worth it. Call me Dave, please, I chuckled, wiping sweat from my forehead. And trust me, after wrestling with steel beams for decades, your fancy tables don't stand a chance. Maria burst into genuine laughter, the kind that made her eyes crinkle. I can't believe you learned to fold napkins into swans just for today. Most fathers would never. Most fathers don't have a daughter like Lily, I interrupted, my chest swelling with so much pride I thought my heart might explode. This girl, she's been through hell and back with that first marriage. Watching her find love again, seeing her face light up when she talks about Clark, God, Maria, there's nothing I wouldn't do to make this day perfect for her. The words caught in my throat. I actually had to blink back tears, thinking about how radiant Lily had looked when she'd called me about the engagement. After watching her cry herself to sleep for months after her divorce, seeing her rebuild herself piece by piece, this wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was proof that my little girl had found her way back to happiness. You know what? Maria said softly, touching my arm. Lily's incredibly lucky. The way you talk about her, my own father never. She trailed off, shaking her head with a wistful smile. I was about to respond when I noticed the cluster of expensive suits and designer handbags in the corner. Clark's family had arrived for the venue walkthrough, and something about their body language made my stomach tighten. They were huddled together, stealing glances in my direction and whispering with the kind of intensity that made my skin crawl. I should probably introduce myself properly, I told Maria, straightening my work shirt and trying to smooth down my unruly hair. Be right back. I approached them with my most genuine smile, the same one that had won over countless clients and coworkers over the years. Afternoon, everyone, beautiful space, isn't it? Lily's going to look like an absolute princess walking down that aisle. The silence that followed felt like ice water in my veins. Clark's mother, Vivian, looked me up and down with the kind of cold assessment usually reserved for checking meat at the grocery store. Oh, you must be the father. The way she said the father made it sound like a disease. Guilty as charged, I laughed, trying to keep the mood light. Dave Thompson, pleasure to finally meet you all properly. That accent, Clark's father, Robert, interrupted with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. Very distinctive. Blue collar, isn't it? I can practically hear the construction site. The words hit like a slap, but I forced my smile to stay in place. 38 years building this city, yes, sir. Honest work that I'm proud of. How wonderfully authentic, Vivian added, and the word dripped with condescension. I suppose someone has to do those jobs, though I must say your presentation is quite different from what we're used to in our family circles. Clark's sister, Jennifer, actually giggled, a sharp, cutting sound. I love how you can just tell someone's story from their hands, don't you think? All those calluses and scars, so very manual. Each word felt like a needle finding its mark. My face burned, but I kept trying, kept hoping this was just awkward small talk that would smooth over. Well, these hands help build half the skyline you see every day, and they built the life that raised the woman your son fell in love with. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That's when I heard familiar footsteps behind me. Lily. Finally. My daughter would see what was happening here, would bridge this gap with her warmth and grace. She'd remind these people that family was about love, not social status. Daddy? Lily's voice was tight, strained. What's going on here? I turned to her with relief flooding my system, my beautiful daughter in her planning outfit, looking every inch the radiant bride to be. But when our eyes met, I didn't see the warmth I expected. I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Oh, Daddy, Lily sighed, and that sigh hit me like a hammer to the chest. There was something in it I'd never heard before. Embarrassment. Like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, my voice catching. The warmth from talking with Maria was draining out of me like water through a broken dam. Clark materialized beside her like a bad omen, sliding his arm around her waist in a gesture that somehow felt more possessive than loving. Dave, he said with that shark smile of his, we need to chat. Absolutely, I said, grabbing onto hope like a drowning man grabs a rope. Maybe we could fix whatever was broken here. Your family seems lovely. Your mother was just telling me about Dad. Stop. Lily's voice cut through mine like a knife through butter. Just, please stop trying so hard. You're making it worse. Making what worse? I felt like I was standing in quicksand, sinking fast and not understanding why. Trying so hard to what? Be friendly? Lily, these people are going to be your family. That's the problem right there, Clark said, his voice smooth as oil on water. You think you belong in our world. The words hit me like a slap across the face. Belong? Clark, I'm her father. Where else would I belong? Lily squeezed her eyes shut like she was in physical pain. When she opened them, I saw something that made my stomach drop into my boots. Shame. She was looking at me with pure, undiluted shame. Daddy, you have to understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Clark's family, they're different. They have standards. Standards. The word tasted like poison in my mouth. What kind of standards, exactly? Vivian had somehow slithered closer during our conversation, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Oh, we don't have standards per se. We simply believe that social gatherings should have, how shall I put this? A certain harmony, like a symphony, every instrument in its proper place. I was the wrong instrument. That's what she was saying without saying it. I still don't understand what you're getting at, I said, though ice was forming in my veins because some part of me was starting to understand perfectly. Lily took a shaky breath, like she was about to jump off a cliff. Dad, we've been discussing this for weeks. Clark and I think it would be better if you stayed home during the wedding. The floor might as well have opened up and swallowed me whole. You don't want me at your wedding. The words came out flat, lifeless, like stating a fact about the weather. It's not that we don't want you there, Clark jumped in, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. It's just that our guest list is very carefully curated. Business associates, family friends from the right backgrounds. You get it. No, I said, my voice growing stronger. I don't get it. Make me get it. Lily's face crumpled like wet paper, but her voice stayed rock steady. Dad, I don't want to see you at my wedding. I don't want to be ashamed. Ashamed of me, her father, the man who'd worked double shifts so she could have dance lessons, who'd stayed up all night when she had the flu, who'd held her while she cried over her failed marriage and promised her that love would find her again. Something cracked inside my chest, but instead of falling apart, I felt myself go cold and calm as winter morning. The hurt was there, burning like acid, but underneath it was something else, something that felt like steel. I see, I said quietly. Daddy, please try to understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized I was staring at a stranger. You're embarrassed by your old man. The guy with dirt under his fingernails and grease stains on his shirts. The one who doesn't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. It's nothing personal, Clark added, like that somehow made it better. It's just image management. Image management. Like I was a problem to be solved instead of a person who'd loved his daughter since the day she was born. Well then, I said, my voice steady as a rock. Thank you for being honest with me. The confusion on their faces was almost funny. They'd expected me to beg, to cry, to make a scene. They hadn't expected gratitude for being stabbed in the heart. I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind me, I heard Lily call out, Dad, wait, let me explain. But I kept walking. As I made my way through the venue, past the tables I'd helped move, past Maria, who was watching me with worried eyes, my mind started working like a machine, clicking and calculating and remembering. The 3 grand Clark had borrowed for the engagement ring when his trust fund was temporarily tied up. My buddy Jake, who'd redone their kitchen for half price because I'd asked him as a personal favor. The strings pulled to get Clark that job at Morrison Construction when he was exploring his options. The weekends I'd spent fixing their car, their plumbing, their problems. All those dinners where I'd swallowed his little jokes about working class wisdom and blue collar charm. Every sacrifice I'd made, every corner I'd cut in my own life to make theirs easier. My daughter was ashamed of me. The man who'd given her everything was now something to be hidden away like a dirty secret. As I climbed into my pickup truck, one thought burned through my mind like a brand. Sometimes people need to learn what they've lost before they can understand what they had. And school was about to be in session. The drive home felt like swimming through thick honey. Every red light gave my brain another chance to replay those words. I don't want to be ashamed. I sat in my driveway for what felt like hours, staring at the house I'd built with these same hands they found so embarrassing. The wraparound porch where Lily used to play tea party, the garden where I'd taught her that good things take time to grow, the workshop where she'd helped me fix everything from broken toys to broken dreams. When had I become something to hide away like a dirty secret? My phone buzzed. Lily calling. Daddy? Her voice was sweet as cotton candy, but I could hear the guilt underneath like gravel in honey. How are you feeling about, everything? About being told I'm too shameful for your wedding? About my own daughter being embarrassed by the man who raised her? Just peachy, Lily. Silence, then a shaky breath. Daddy, it's not. You're twisting this. Look, I've been thinking maybe we moved too fast. What if you came to the rehearsal dinner instead? It'll be smaller, more personal. Just close family. Close family. I let the words hang in the air like smoke. So I'm family enough for the warm-up act, but too embarrassing for the main event? That's not how. Lily, let me ask you something. These hands that embarrass you so much, the ones with the calluses and the scars, do you remember what they built? Daddy, please don't. They built the house you grew up in. Every board, every nail. They fixed your bike when you crashed it learning to ride. They worked double shifts so you could have dance lessons while other kids made do with after-school programs. I know you worked hard, but what? But it doesn't count because I didn't do it in a suit and tie. Because I came home with dirt under my fingernails instead of ink stains on my shirt. It's not about that. Then what is it about, sweetheart? Help me understand why the man who taught you to drive, who walked you down the aisle at your first wedding, who held you while you cried through your divorce, why that man is suddenly too much of an embarrassment to stand in the same room as Clark's fancy friends. Her voice cracked like thin ice. Daddy, you don't fit in with their world. Their world. I tasted the words like they were poison. You mean the world where people judge a man's worth by his accent instead of his actions? Where what matters isn't how hard you work, but how soft your hands are. You're making this harder than it needs to be. No, Lily, you made it hard the moment you decided that blue collar means second class, that a man who builds things with his hands is somehow less than a man who shuffles papers at a desk. That's not fair. Fair? The word came out like a bark of laughter. You want to talk about fair? Fair is the daughter I raised to be proud of where she came from, not ashamed. Fair is recognizing that these embarrassing hands gave you everything you needed to become the woman Clark fell in love with. Silence stretched between us like a canyon. I didn't mean it like that, she whispered. How did you mean it then? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you've decided that everything I am, everything I built for you, everything I sacrificed, it's all just an inconvenience to your new life. Daddy, please. You're being dramatic. Dramatic? Lily, I've spent 28 years making sure you never wanted for anything, and now you're telling me that my reward for that is being hidden away like some dirty family secret because I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners. It's just, Clark's family has expectations. Clark's family. My voice went flat as roadkill. The same family that isn't paying 1 red cent for this wedding you're so worried about them seeing me at? Another silence, this one heavy as a thundercloud. I knew you'd understand. You're the best, Daddy. Oh, and while I have you on the phone, the caterer called about the final payment. It's due tomorrow morning, and Clark's paycheck got delayed again. Could you cover it? Just this once. The audacity hit me like a slap across the face. Lily, do you hear yourself right now? What do you mean? You just finished telling me I'm too embarrassing to be seen at your wedding, and now you're asking me to pay for it? Daddy, those are two different things. No, sweetheart. They're the exact same thing. You want my money, but not my presence. You want what these hands can provide, but not the man they belong to. You're making it sound awful. I'm making it sound like what it is. You're asking the man you're ashamed of to bankroll the party he's banned from. We talked about this. You'll be at the rehearsal dinner. We agreed on that. No, Lily, you decided. You threw me a bone and expected me to be grateful. There's a difference between agreeing and being cornered. But you understand why, right? It makes things easier for everyone. Easier. Like I was a problem that needed managing instead of a father who deserved respect. Of course I understand, sweetheart. Crystal clear. You need money from the embarrassing old man, but you don't want him cluttering up your picture-perfect day. So you'll handle the caterer payment? The question hung in the air like a noose. Here was my moment of truth. Absolutely, Lily. Family takes care of family, right? Even when family is too ashamed to claim it. Oh, thank you, Daddy. I knew you'd come through. You always do. After I hung up, I sat there feeling like I'd been gutted with a rusty spoon. Then something clicked in my mind, a switch flipping from hurt to something much more dangerous. I walked into my workshop and pulled out a manila folder I'd never thought I'd need. Financial records, bank statements, receipts going back 2 years, the paper trail of my love. I spread everything across my workbench like a crime scene investigator. Clark's engagement ring, $3,000 when he came crying about being short on funds. 8 months later, still waiting for that payback. The kitchen renovation where I'd called in a favor with Jake, costing him 12 grand in lost profit just to help my baby girl. Car repairs on Clark's fancy BMW, every weekend for 3 months, 4,000 in parts, countless hours of my time. Their apartment deposit when Clark's credit was worse than a 3-legged horse in a race, 4,000 co-signed. The furniture I'd built for their place because store prices were just too much right now. And now this wedding. The bills scattered across my bench told the story. Venue, catering, flowers, photography, music, her dress, $41,500. For a party where the guest of honor was too ashamed to invite the man writing the checks. I did the math. $78,000. That's what my embarrassing presence had cost me. Clark's high and mighty family looking down their noses at me while I bankrolled their fairy tale. The irony was thick enough to choke on. I picked up my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. Time to make some calls, but not the kind they'd expect. First, I called the caterer. Hi, this is Dave Thompson. I need to discuss the final payment for the Clark-Lily wedding. 20 minutes later, I hung up with a smile that felt cold as winter steel. Then I called the venue coordinator. Maria, it's Dave. We need to chat about some changes to the wedding arrangements. By the time I finished my calls, the sun was setting, and I felt lighter than I had in hours. Sometimes the best way to teach someone the value of something is to take it away. And my daughter was about to get a master class in consequences. The wedding they were so ashamed to have me attend, it was about to become very interesting indeed. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Clark's number. He'd sent me a message earlier. Hey Dave, any chance you could help us out with the final catering payment? Just until my next check clears? Just until his next check clears, like all the other times. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, I was happy to make that dream come true. But they were about to discover that pretending and reality were two very different things. And reality was about to become very expensive for them. 3 days later, my phone started ringing like a fire alarm. Dave, thank God you picked up. Clark's voice was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. We've got a serious problem here. The caterer just called and said there's been some kind of mix-up with the payment. What kind of mix-up? I ask, my voice calm as a summer pond. They're saying the payment was canceled. They're threatening to pull out of the wedding entirely if we don't get this sorted by tomorrow. Dave, we need your help. This is a disaster. I leaned back in my workshop chair, surrounded by the wedding gifts I'd never finish. That does sound like a pickle, Clark. A pickle? Dave, this is our wedding. Lily's in full panic mode. She's been crying for hours. We need you to call them, straighten this out. You can fix this, right? Well, now, that's interesting. When did I become the point man for your wedding crisis management? What do you mean? You always handle this stuff. You're like our family's problem solver. Our family. Rich, coming from the guy whose family thought I was trailer trash. Clark, let me ask you something. How many wedding emergencies has your family stepped up to handle? Silence thick as molasses. Dave, this isn't the time for... No, I think this is exactly the time. See, I'm just a blue-collar embarrassment who doesn't belong at fancy parties. Why would you want someone like me handling your important business? Look, Dave, I know things got a little heated the other day, but a little heated? I felt laughter bubbling up like oil from a well. Son, your mother looked at me like I was something she'd scrape off her shoe. Your father made jokes about my accent. Your sister talked about my hands like they were some kind of disease. They didn't mean anything by it. And then my own daughter told me she was ashamed to have me at her wedding. But now that there's a crisis, suddenly the embarrassing old man is exactly who you need. Funny how that works. Dave, please. Lily's falling apart. Can't we just put all that behind us and put it behind us? The words tasted bitter as black coffee. Clark, you want me to fix your problems, but you don't want me at your celebration. You want my money, but not my company. You want my connections, but not my presence. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me like I'm too stupid to understand. Because right now it looks like you only remember I exist when you need something. The silence stretched out like a tightrope. The caterer, Clark said finally, his voice small as a mouse. Can you call them? I already did. You did? When? What did they say? Oh, I called them 3 days ago. I had a real interesting conversation about payment schedules and contract modifications. What kind of modifications? I smiled, and it felt sharp as a hawk's talon. Well, turns out when the person paying the bills decides to make some changes, caterers are real accommodating. Amazing how flexible people become when money's involved. What changes, Dave? What did you do? Nothing permanent. Just made sure they understood who their real customer is. See, Clark, there's a big difference between writing checks and cashing them. Your family may have the pedigree, but I've got the wallet, and right now, that wallet's feeling mighty neglected. Are you holding our wedding hostage? Hostage? I laughed, and it echoed through my workshop like a gunshot. Son, I'm just exercising my rights as a paying customer. The caterer wanted clarity about who's actually in charge of this circus. I provided it. Dave, you can't do this. Lily will be devastated. Lily will learn a valuable lesson about consequences. Actions have results, Clark. Disrespect has a price tag, and that bill just came due. What do you want? Money? We can pay you back. I don't want your money, boy. I want something worth a hell of a lot more than cash. What? Respect, recognition, and acknowledgement that the man you're so embarrassed by is the same man keeping your dreams afloat. Dave, please. Here's what's going to happen, Clark. You and Lily are going to sit down and have a real hard think about what matters more, your pride or your wedding, because right now you can't have both. What does that mean? It means the embarrassing old man holds all the cards now, and if you want your fairy tale wedding, you're going to have to decide whether my presence is really more shameful than having the wedding at all. I hung up before he could respond. 10 minutes later, Lily called. This time, there was no sugar in her voice, just raw panic seasoned with tears. Daddy, what did you do? Hello, sweetheart. You sound upset. What's troubling you? Her voice hit me like a freight train carrying pure desperation. Don't play games with me. Each word was sharp as broken glass, cutting through the phone line. The caterer, the venue, the photographer, they're all saying there are complications with the payments. Clark said you canceled everything. I could hear her breathing like she'd just run a marathon, could picture her pacing around their apartment like a caged animal. The panic in her voice was thick enough to spread on toast. I didn't cancel anything, Lily. I just had some conversations with my vendors about the terms of service. Your vendors? The way she said it, you'd think I'd claimed ownership of the moon. Her voice cracked like ice on a spring pond. Daddy, this is my wedding. Is it? Because last I checked, it was a party I wasn't invited to. Hard to call it your wedding when you've made it clear the bride's father isn't welcome. What came next nearly broke my heart. She started crying, not the gentle tears of a movie heroine, but the ugly, desperate sobs of someone whose world was falling apart like a house of cards in a tornado. Daddy, please. I'm begging you. Her voice was shaking like autumn leaves in a windstorm. People are flying in from across the country. Clark's grandmother is 93 years old. This might be her last wedding. You can't destroy this. The desperation in her voice was so thick I could practically taste it. She was grasping for straws, throwing everything at the wall to see what might stick. I'm not destroying anything, sweetheart. I'm just making sure everyone understands who's actually running this show. This is insane. The words exploded out of her like she was spitting nails. You're acting like a child. Her anger hit me like a physical blow, but underneath it I could hear something else. Fear. Real, bone-deep terror that her perfect day was crumbling like stale cookies. A child? The word hit me like a slap, but I kept my voice steady as stone. Lily, a child throws tantrums when they don't get their way. An adult makes calculated decisions based on how they're treated. Guess which one I'm doing? I could hear her swallowing hard, trying to compose herself. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, defeated. Fine. You want to be at the wedding? Come to the wedding. I'll tell Clark's family to deal with it. The resignation in her voice was like watching a flag of surrender being raised. She was giving up, but not gracefully. More like someone jumping off a cliff and hoping for the best. Oh, how generous. Now I'm invited to my own daughter's wedding, but let me guess I should sit in the back, keep my mouth shut, and pretend to be grateful for the scraps from your table? What do you want from me? The question came out strangled, like she was choking on her own pride. I want my daughter back, the one who used to be proud of her old man, the one who didn't think working with your hands made you a second-class citizen. I never said that. But her protest was weak as watered-down coffee, and we both knew it. You didn't have to say it, Lily. You said it with your actions. You said it when you chose Clark's family's comfort over your father's dignity. Silence. Then the sound that cut through me like a rusty knife, my grown daughter sobbing like she was 5 years old again with a scraped knee. Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I should never have. Her words were drowning in tears. Just fix this. Make it go away. The broken way she said it reminded me of every time she'd ever come to me with a problem, expecting Daddy to wave his magic wand and make everything better. It's not that simple anymore, sweetheart. What do you mean? Her voice went thin as paper, like she was afraid of what was coming next. Well, see, while you and Clark were panicking about the caterer, I had some time to think. And you know what I realized? This problem runs deeper than one wedding. What are you talking about? The words came out strangled, like she was trying to breathe through a straw. Clark's job at Morrison Construction. Remember how he got that position? I could practically hear her heart dropping into her stomach. Her voice went small as a whisper, fragile as spun glass. You called in a favor. That's right. Had a nice chat with my old buddy Tom Morrison this morning. Told him some interesting stories about his newest employee, about reliability, about character, about a young man who makes promises he doesn't keep. Daddy, no, you didn't. The horror in her voice was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. She sounded like someone watching a car accident in slow motion, powerless to stop it. Tom was real interested to hear about the $3,000 Clark borrowed for your engagement ring. Money that was supposed to be paid back months ago. Tom takes integrity real serious in his business. You're going to get him fired? Her voice climbed higher with each word, scaling the walls of panic like she was trying to escape from a burning building. I'm not going to do anything, Lily. Clark's employment depends entirely on Clark, but Tom now has some additional information to consider when making future decisions about his staff. This is blackmail. She spat the words like they tasted bitter as medicine. No, sweetheart, this is consequences. For 2 years, I've watched that boy treat me like a combination ATM and handyman service. I've bitten my tongue while he made jokes about blue collar wisdom at family dinners, or I've swallowed my pride while his family looked down their noses at me. But Clark's job, her voice was getting smaller and smaller, like she was shrinking with each word, will be fine as long as he starts acting like a man instead of a spoiled child. Same goes for this wedding. What do you want us to do? The defeat in her voice was complete now, like someone waving a white flag in a war they never wanted to fight. I want you to remember where you came from. I want Clark to show some respect for the man who's been keeping his life afloat. And I want his high and mighty family to understand that money talks louder than bloodlines. How? The single word came out like a prayer from someone who'd lost their faith but was still hoping for a miracle. Here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, you and Clark are going to drive over to his parents' house. You're going to sit them down and explain exactly who's been paying for their precious social event. You're going to tell them that the embarrassing blue-collar worker they've been insulting is the same man who made their fairy tale possible. Daddy. She tried to interrupt, but her voice was weak as a dying battery. Then you're going to call me, put me on speaker, and every single one of them is going to apologize. Not because they have to, but because they finally understand what respect looks like. And if they refuse? The question came out barely above a whisper, like she was afraid to hear the answer. Then I guess you'll find out how much a last-minute wedding costs when you're paying for it yourself. Spoiler alert, it's a lot more than $78,000. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. 78,000? Her voice was barely a whisper, like she was afraid saying it louder would make it more real. That's what loving you has cost me, Lily. What supporting you and Clark has run me, and apparently that's also what it costs to be considered too embarrassing for polite company. I didn't know it was that much. The words came out strangled, like she was choking on her own ignorance. You didn't know because you never asked. You just assumed Daddy's wallet was bottomless and his feelings didn't matter. What if we can't convince them? She sounded like a little girl asking if the monsters under the bed were real. You know what, Lily? Don't worry about convincing them. Don't worry about any of it. What do you mean? The confusion in her voice was thick as molasses. I mean, the wedding's back on. Tomorrow morning, I'll call all the vendors, restore the payments, make sure everything goes exactly as planned. Really? The relief in her voice was so intense I could practically feel it through the phone. Oh, Daddy, thank you. I knew you'd... But here's the thing, sweetheart. I've decided I am going to attend your wedding after all. The silence that followed was loaded as a shotgun. You are? Of course. Wouldn't miss my daughter's wedding for the world. I'll see you there, Lily. Daddy, wait. But I hung up before she could finish. Some surprises are better left unwrapped until the right moment. Time to get ready for a wedding. The wedding day arrived like a freight train carrying a load of consequences. I spent the morning carefully selecting my outfit. Not the suit I'd bought months ago, hanging hopefully in my closet. No, today called for something more authentic. My best work coveralls, the navy blue ones with my name embroidered on the pocket, steel-toed boots polished to a mirror shine. My Morrison Construction baseball cap, the one with 20 years of honest sweat worked into the fabric. I looked in the mirror and saw exactly what Clark's family saw, a blue-collar worker. The difference was, today I was wearing it like armor. The venue was everything I'd paid for, elegant, expensive, perfect. Guests in designer clothes sipped champagne that cost more per bottle than most people made in a day. The flowers were arranged like works of art, the music was sophisticated, and the whole scene looked like something out of a magazine. I walked through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Crystal champagne flutes froze halfway to lips. The sound of designer heels clicking on marble floors came to a stuttering halt. Clark's mother, Vivian, spotted me first. Her face went through more changes than a traffic light: confusion, recognition, horror, and finally something that looked like she'd swallowed a live frog. David? She whispered, like she was seeing a ghost in work boots. Evening, Vivian. Beautiful party. Really outdid yourselves with the decorations. Her eyes darted around frantically, looking for help that wasn't coming. You're here. Wouldn't miss it for the world. This is my daughter's wedding, after all. I could see Clark across the room, his face white as fresh paint. He started moving toward me like a man walking to his own execution, weaving through guests who were all staring and whispering behind their hands. Dave, he said when he reached me, his voice barely above a whisper. You can't. I mean, maybe we should talk privately. Privately? I smiled, and it felt sharp as a freshly honed blade. Clark, this is a celebration. No time for private conversations. Besides, I've got some things I'd like to share with everyone. The panic in his eyes was beautiful to behold. Lily appeared next, practically running in her wedding dress. She looked absolutely stunning, every inch the perfect bride, except for the expression of pure terror on her face. Daddy? She hissed under her breath. What are you doing? I'm attending my daughter's wedding, just like you invited me to. Not like this. Like what, sweetheart? Like the man I am who's been paying for all this? Before she could respond, I noticed the band finishing their current song. Perfect timing. I walked over to the band leader, a young man with perfectly styled hair and a tuxedo that probably cost more than my truck. Excuse me, son. Mind if I say a few words? Father of the bride and all. He looked confused, but handed me the microphone. The room gradually quieted as I tapped it twice, the sound echoing through the elegant space. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The silence that fell was complete. You could have heard a feather hit the floor. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Thompson, Lily's father, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about tonight. I could see Lily in my peripheral vision, her face a mask of mortification. Clark looked like he was about to pass out. His family appeared to be praying for the floor to open up and swallow them whole. Now, I know some of you might be wondering about my attire. These aren't exactly formal wedding clothes, are they? But see, I figured I should dress as what I am, a construction worker, a man who builds things with his hands. Murmurs rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. And I wanted to tell you all about what these hands have built. They built the house where Lily grew up. They built her confidence when bullies picked on her at school. They built her first bookshelf, her treehouse, her hope chest. I paused, letting my eyes sweep across the sea of uncomfortable faces. But more recently, these hands built something else. They built this evening. Every flower arrangement you're admiring, every note of music you're hearing, every bite of food you'll taste tonight, it was all built by a man who works in coveralls and steel-toed boots. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. You see, Clark's family, lovely people I'm sure, they had some concerns about me attending tonight. They felt that someone like me might not fit in with their social circle, that my presence might be embarrassing. I could see Vivian trying to disappear into her champagne glass. And you know what? They were absolutely right. I don't fit in. I don't know which fork to use for the salad. I don't speak with the right accent. I don't have the right pedigree or the right connections. More murmurs, this time with a different tone. People were starting to understand where this was going. But here's what I do have. I have the receipts. $41,500 for this venue, this catering, this band, these flowers. Another $37,000 in loans and help I've given the happy couple over the years. $78,000 total. Now the murmurs turned into audible gasps. So while Clark's family was deciding I wasn't good enough to attend, I was the one making sure there was something to attend. While they were worried about their social reputation, I was building their son's entire life. I looked directly at Clark's parents, my smile cold as winter steel. Funny how that works, isn't it? The embarrassing man turns out to be the one keeping the fairy tale afloat. I handed the microphone back to the stunned bandleader. Anyway, don't let me interrupt your evening. Please eat, drink, dance. Enjoy yourselves. After all, it's been paid for. As I walked away, the silence behind me was deafening. But slowly I began to hear something else. The sound of my steel-toed boots clicking on marble, echoing through a room full of people who would never again question the worth of a man who works with his hands. Sometimes, the best way to teach people about respect is to show them exactly what it costs when you don't get it. And tonight, The bill had finally come due. As I walked out of that reception hall, my steel-toed boots echoing on marble one last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the satisfaction of a job well done. Not the kind that comes from building something with your hands, but the deeper satisfaction that comes from building character in the people you love. My phone was already buzzing with calls I wouldn't answer tonight. There would be consequences, conversations, and probably tears. But there would also be understanding, eventually. Sometimes the people who love you most need the hardest lessons. I climbed into my pickup truck and looked back at the elegant venue one last time. Through the windows, I could see the party continuing, people in expensive clothes eating expensive food, dancing to expensive music, all of it paid for by a man in work coveralls who they deemed unworthy of their company. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here's what I learned. You can't buy dignity, but you sure can show people what it costs to ignore it. Never be ashamed of the hands that built your life, even when the people you built it for forget their value. And sometimes, the only way to teach someone your worth is to let them see exactly what life looks like without you. The foundation of any relationship is respect. Without it, everything else is just expensive decoration on a house built on sand. As I drove home, I smiled. Tomorrow, my daughter would understand what her father was really worth, and that education was priceless.